Hey everyone, how are you all doing? Welcome or welcome back to my channel. So it's been a while since I've done any sort of reading wrap up on my channel, so I thought that I would do a video talking about some books that I've read recently, just to kind of catch you guys up on what books I've been reading. So in this video I'm only going to be talking about some books that I've not talked about yet on my channel, so I'm just going to be talking about some of the books that you guys might not know that I've read this year. So I've got a good stack of books here to talk about, so let's just get started. So first we've got a bit of a controversial one, maybe, I don't know, but it is a very popular and beloved series here on booktube and on book talk, and that is the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy by Stephanie Garber. So the third book came out some point at the end of 2023, and I didn't read it when it came out because I was waiting for the audiobook to be available, and I also wanted to reread the first two books before getting into the third one, because I did not reread the first book before going into the second one when that one came out, and I was completely lost for a good chunk of that book. So basically it just took me a while to get to the final book. So if you don't know, this trilogy is the kind of spin-off companion series to the Caraval trilogy by Stephanie Garber. Both series are so fun and interesting and whimsical. I love the world that Stephanie Garber has created with these two series. So the first book is Once Upon a Broken Heart, the sequel is The Ballad of Never After, and the finale is A Curse for True Love. I'm going to give you some basic thoughts on the first two books since they are rereads. I've talked about them on my channel before, and then we'll get into A Curse for True Love, which I was a bit disappointed by. So I really love Once Upon a Broken Heart. One of the main characters in this series is Jax, and he was my favorite character in the Caraval series, so naturally really enjoy following him as more of like a main character in this series, and I really love his dynamic with Evangeline. These books are also narrated by my favorite audiobook narrator, Rebecca Soler. I have yet to meet an audiobook done by her that I have not enjoyed, so obviously that's a huge plus for this series. So I enjoy the first book, it's a fun time, but the sequel, The Ballad of Never After, I feel like is everybody's favorite. I don't know what Stephanie Garber put into this book, but it is amazing, and I feel like I didn't get the full effect of it the first time since I didn't remember a lot of things from the first book, so I was kind of confused for the first chunk of it. But in my reread of it, I loved it. I was eating these books up, I was listening to them so quickly, and the cliffhanger that book ends off on, I remembered before my reread that there was a huge cliffhanger at the end, because I remember that feeling. If you guys know me, my memory is crap. I tend to remember vibes and how a book made me feel more than like actual plot points and stuff. I remembered that there was a huge plot twist at the end, I just didn't remember what it was. So when I got to it in my reread, I was like, whoa, hey, I cannot wait to read the final book and see where this goes. So that brings us to A Curse for True Love. I feel like I hyped myself up for this book a little too much, and that definitely lended itself into a bit of disappointment. I think this book was a bit of a perfect storm for some things that I don't love. So the first two books in this series are single POV, we're just following Evangeline, but in this book we also get point of views for Apollo and for Jax, and while I love Rebecca Soler and her narration was still perfect, I love her so much, I did not enjoy the narrator for Apollo and Jax. There's always a discrepancy in dual POV audiobooks where the two narrators don't narrate all the character voices the same, obviously because they're two different people. So the way that Evangeline would narrate certain characters that I'd grown accustomed to, especially since I had just finished listening to the first two books, is completely different to how Apollo and Jax's narrator decided to narrate those characters, and it was such a complete like 180 that it really took me by surprise and like caught me off guard. So that was an issue that I had. I just in general didn't like the narrator and the choices that he made, I guess. But also I just don't care about Apollo as a character. I did not mind him when we were just reading about him through our main character, but getting in his head was not my favorite. I detested every single chapter where we were in his head. I wanted nothing to do with this man, and he just had way too many POV chapters for my liking. I also didn't like Jax's chapters really all that much. I do feel like it kind of took the mystery out of his character and like the intrigue out of his character, because we were just privy to all of his thoughts, whereas before he's kind of like more mysterious, you know, like he's more guarded, we don't know everything about him, and I liked it that way. That being said, I feel like we didn't see enough of Jax in this book. He definitely felt like a side character, was just kind of pushed to the side, and the moments that we did get with him, while there were a lot of moments that I did enjoy, I do feel like his character made a complete 180 in this book. He was just acting completely differently, and I've looked into reviews of this book and a lot of people feel the same way as me, which is always super validating, like when you read a book and you don't like certain aspects of it and then you find out that other people feel the exact same way, because sometimes I don't know if I'm just like crazy and like making things up, but especially coming off of the first two books and immediately jumping into this one, Jax really did feel like a different character. So overall, I still liked this book. I still love this series and this world and these characters, but I feel like The Ballad of Never After was so good, and it, you know, was the opposite of a second book slump. It's the best book in the series, and I feel like sometimes that is incredibly rare. That honestly, I don't know if the third book ever could have lived up to it, but I do think there was just a few choices made that I do understand why she made them, but it just didn't fully work for me. So I still enjoyed it. It was still a fun time, but it was just not exactly what I was wanting from the book, and I did feel kind of let down by the end. Also, I don't rate my books. I haven't rated them for years, so you're not going to get star ratings from me, but just know I enjoyed it, but didn't enjoy it as much as I wanted to. The next book I want to talk about is 5 Survive by Holly Jackson. This was another audiobook listen for me. So I love the A Good Girl's Guide to a Murder series by Holly Jackson, as a lot of people do. So naturally I looked to her other releases when I finished that series last year, and this one is like completely different to A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. We're not following like a murder case. The character's not trying to solve a murder. To be fair, I listened to this book when I was sick, so my memory of it is a little bit hazy because my brain was in a brain fog, so I don't really know what happened. But I believe the characters are on a road trip for spring break and they get lost. They take a wrong turn, and I believe their like car breaks down as well. They're kind of like in this like abandoned empty street, maybe surrounded by like a forest potentially. Like I said, brain fog. And then they find out that there is a guy hiding in the woods with a like gun pointed at them, and they find a walkie-talkie, I believe, taped to their car, and basically they're being threatened and they have to like reveal secrets until they find the secret that the shooter is looking for. But this book was a wild ride. Like I said, I was sick when I was listening to it, and the majority of my listening took place over one night. I could not fall asleep for the life of me, and so I was just sat upright in my bed listening to this audiobook until I realized that it was like almost 5 in the morning and I had just a little bit of the audiobook left. So I went to bed even though crazy things were happening, like we were at the end of the book. But when I woke up a few hours later, I immediately finished the audiobook. Like I didn't even get out of bed, I just immediately finished it, and it was a wild ride. Okay, I can't say that I enjoyed any of the characters particularly because they kind of all have these crazy wacky secrets, these crazy things going on. They're kind of all lying to each other, and it was just so many things happened. I did not see the reveal coming. I don't know if other people did while they were reading. I have not looked at reviews, but I did not see the reveal coming. The entire time I was trying to figure out what was going on, trying to figure out what was happening, but I did not guess it. I did not guess it. But overall, I enjoyed this book. I think it was a really compelling and quick listen, and I would recommend it, especially if you enjoy Holly Jackson's books already. But if you're looking for a good standalone mystery thriller type of book, then this one I think is a great choice. The audiobook was really well done as well. The next book I want to talk about, I actually have a physical copy of, and that is The Breakup Tour by Emily Wibberley and Austin Siegmund Broca. This is a new release of 2024. I tabbed it a whole lot, if that gives you any indication to how much I loved it, but I absolutely adore Emily and Austin's books. I love their YA novels and I love their adult novels. There is something so special about them. I love their concepts, I love their writing, and I love their characters and their romances. So this book, we follow a pop star, if you couldn't tell. The top blurb says, a rising star musician has a second chance at love with an old flame she remembers all too well in this swoony romance. There's a lot of Taylor Swift inspiration in this book. I believe they dedicated this book to Taylor Swift. Yeah, it's to the Swifties and Miss Swift for inspiration evermore. How cute. So we follow our main character Riley, who kind of rises to stardom overnight because of her breakup song concept album and its unforgettable lead single. But Riley's ex-husband claims that this hit song is about him when it's actually about her old college boyfriend Max. And so Riley reaches out, goes to see her college boyfriend and asks him to go public as her songwriting muse. And in his desperation to save his family's retirement home that they run, which is kind of having some trouble right now and might shut down, he agrees to go public as her songwriting muse, but only if he can go on tour with her. And so they end up touring the country together and maybe rekindling their old relationship, their old flame. So obviously this book deals with second chance romance, and that is one of my favorite tropes. Like, I think it's fake dating and then second chance romance is right in there, and I am particularly obsessed with second chance romances that focus on a couple that were together years ago. In this case, I think it was like a decade ago or like just a long time ago, and then all these years go by and they still think of one another and they still have love for each other and they find their way back to each other. I just think there's something so beautiful in that, and knowing that this breakup album has a song about Max, her college boyfriend, and that he still means that much to her that she wrote this song about him. It gave me all the feels. I really enjoyed that. I also really loved following these characters around on tour. I love books that center around music, and this was no different. It was really interesting to kind of get an insight into the music industry, the touring industry, and to kind of see how they navigated things. They share a tour bus, which is just the drama of it all. I'm obsessed. And then also all of the Taylor Swift inspiration was also a lot of fun. And then the ending of this book. I have to talk about the ending of this book, obviously in a spoiler-free way, but the ending was so beautiful. It was just so heartwarming and cute, and they did a pre-order campaign and it came with an art print, and the art print showcases a scene from the end of the book. And once I found that out, because I have the art print on my bookcase, once I like read the book and found out what that scene was, I died. It was beautiful. So if you love Taylor Swift, if you've read books by Emily and Austen before, if you're just looking for a fun music-centered second chance romance book, then I really recommend this one. And honestly, I recommend all of their books. I feel like Wabroka does second chance romance particularly well, and I feel like it's a common theme in some of their books. So I love this book so much. I already want to read it. I feel like it did kind of put me in a bit of a reading slump after I read it too, because it took me a while to like finish a book after this one, but it is just so good. So the next book is a YA contemporary. It's The Someday Daughter by Ellen O'Clover. If you've been on my channel at all, then you know that 7% of Roe Devereaux was one of my favorite books of last year. It was also the Besties in Books book club pick for March, which the live show should be happening next week, so you still have some time to read the book and join in with us. But obviously I was highly anticipating Ellen O'Clover's sophomore novel with how much I loved her debut, and this was such a solid follow-up to Roe Devereaux, such a solid sophomore novel. I didn't love it quite as much as Roe Devereaux, but I still really loved it. I read it really quickly and it was just a really great book. So this book basically follows our main character Audrey, and her mom is kind of like this famous writer known for her book called The Someday Daughter. It's a book that she wrote before she had kids, talking to her someday daughter essentially. And so the world kind of knows Audrey as her mom's someday daughter, and they think she's so lucky to have someone like her mom for her mom. But Audrey knows a different side to being the someday daughter, where she kind of lives her life feeling more like a promotional tool than an actual daughter. And she's kind of determined to find her own identity in life and her own path, but her mom asks her to go on her book tour with her, and Audrey feels like this is the last chance to kind of salvage a relationship with her mom and figure out how they best fit into each other's lives now. But obviously Audrey has no idea what's in store for her over the summer, including a really cute boy. So this book has anxiety rep, which is obviously something that I'm always looking for, and I thought it was so well done in this book. I also really enjoyed the complicated mother-daughter relationship between Audrey and her mother, and all of the things that kind of came up with that throughout the book. And then obviously I loved the romance between Audrey and the love interest Silas. They were so cute. I just loved how he kind of provided this safe space for Audrey to share her feelings and he was just very, very supportive of her and very kind and caring and patient, and I just thought that they worked together extremely well. Plus he has a dog named Puddles. I'm like, is he just not the cutest thing you've ever seen? I love him. Yeah, this was a really solid YA, a solid sophomore novel, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I would recommend it to you if you are looking for a YA contemporary exploring mother-daughter relationships and a very cute romance with anxiety rep. It was fantastic. So the next book is The Fragile Threads of Power by V.E. Schwab. This is the first book in the kind of spin-off trilogy for the Darker Shade of Magic series. So this is the Threads of Power series. But I guess it can also be considered book 4 in the Shades of Magic series because we follow all of the same characters that we do in the Shades of Magic series. Basically anybody who survived that series you see in this one, but we also follow a few new characters, the main one being Tess. But yeah, I'm not going to talk about what this book's about since it is technically the 4th book in the series, and I would 100% recommend you read A Darker Shade of Magic before jumping into this series, because otherwise you're just going to be completely lost, because this book does take place 7 years after the events of A Conjuring of Light, which is just crazy. I was really nervous to pick this book up because I love Shades of Magic so much, and I think that I was just really nervous to see where my beloved characters ended up since it has been 7 years since we've last seen them in the story. I'm gonna be completely honest, I was kind of scared in the first half of this book. It kind of felt boring, incredibly slow paced, which is not abnormal for V.E. Schwab books. I feel like her adult ones in particular and these books do tend to be slower paced, but I was getting kind of nervous because I felt like nothing was happening. We hadn't actually seen that many scenes of our new character Tess, who is supposedly the main character in this series, and so I was kind of like, what's going on there? But I truly do think that this book is just the bridge book between the Shades of Magic series and the Threads of Power. So much has happened in those 7 years that it makes sense that we have to spend a bunch of time catching up on all of the characters that we know and kind of catching up with the world and everything that has changed. So I understand, and once we got past the halfway mark, I was in it. Things felt like they were picking up. We got to see more of Tess. Our characters started to kind of connect more because at the beginning they're kind of all separated, or a lot of them are separated. But once our characters kind of came together and we started figuring out things a little bit more and started spending more time in the present as opposed to catching up with the last 7 years, then I was like, okay, I should have just trusted V.E. Schwab. Like, of course I'm gonna love this book. It's definitely not my favorite in this world, but I am intrigued to see where the rest of the books go. It was extremely nice to be back with this cast of characters that I love so much, and I do think that if I didn't love this cast of characters as much as I do, then it would have dragged 10 times more for me. So while it was slow paced, I was still enjoying myself because I do love the characters. If you love the characters, I think you'll be fine, but it was so nice to see all the characters again, Kel and Lila and Rye and Alucard, and it was just really, really wonderful. The next book is Nick and Charlie by Alice Oseman. This is another one that I listened to as an audiobook. So I read This Winter in December, which is another kind of like Nick and Charlie novella from the Heartstopper books, and so after reading that I was more intrigued to read Nick and Charlie and to kind of read more about these characters outside of the graphic novels. I still need to read Solitaire, which focuses on Charlie's sister, but this book I believe takes place after volume 5, I think, and we kind of follow Nick and Charlie as Nick is preparing to leave for university, and so there's just like a lot of feelings that come up around that, and I actually really enjoyed this little novella. I feel like the novellas aren't people's favorites, which understandable. I personally love seeing the illustrations of Nick and Charlie while reading about them, so it was kind of weird to be reading this, and when I read This Winter, to just kind of like hear about it in like a prose kind of way, but I still really enjoyed it. This one obviously has like some sadder elements to it because of the relationship struggles that they are facing, but overall it's Nick and Charlie. It's Heartstopper. I really, really enjoyed it. And the final book that I want to talk about today is Finding Me by Viola Davis. This is her memoir that I believe came out last year. I love Viola Davis. I've loved her in every project I've seen her in, and I was really intrigued to read her memoir. My friend Lisa also read it recently and really enjoyed it, so that kind of also gave me the push that I needed. And obviously I went the audiobook route because I love listening to celebrities read their own memoirs. It just kind of feels more immersive, and I think she did did an incredible job narrating the audiobook. It was fantastic. I just love her voice so much. But I honestly didn't know anything about her beyond the movies and shows that I've seen her in, so it was really interesting to learn more about her life from like very early childhood to kind of more present day. It was a hard listen at times because she did have a pretty difficult childhood, living in poverty and dealing with bullying in school and racism, and for a while her dad was very abusive to her mother, and there was some like sexual abuse going on from some people, and it was a hard listen at times, but it was really nice to learn more about Viola Davis. Obviously, coming from her own words, having her read it aloud and narrate the audiobook. It was just a really good reading experience, and I would definitely recommend this memoir to you if you like Viola Davis, or if you just like listening to memoirs and want to hear more about a Black woman's experience in life, but also in the film and TV industry and the hardships that she experienced with that as well. But yeah, those are all of the books that I wanted to discuss with you today. I've read a lot more books than this year. I've read 34 books this year so far, but a lot of them have been rereads and a lot of them have been in vlogs, like my Christina Lauren vlog. If you guys want to go check that out, I will link some videos down below. My Shadow and Bone reading vlog. So I will put down below any other videos that I've made this year that talk about the books that I did not talk about here if you are interested in knowing the other books that I've read this year. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to give it a huge thumbs up. Comment down below and let me know your favorite book that you've read so far this year, or how many books you've read so far this year. I'd really love to know. Subscribe if you've not yet already, and I will see you guys next time.